An Honest Citizen, written by Mark Twain. When I reached middle age, I decided that the time had come for me to stop my wandering life and, as they say, to settle down. I, therefore, bought a good house in a pleasant and very respectable neighborhood and prepared myself to be a sober and sensible householder. I intended to be sociable, hospitable, reliable, and helpful. In short, a model neighbor and a model citizen. My first caller was a gentleman who told me that he was an assessor. I was not sure what an assessor was, but I took him to be a kind of tradesman, most probably a shopkeeper. Do come in and sit down, I said in my friendliest voice. He came in, sat down, and fixed his eyes on me. After a few orderly remarks about the weather, I could not think of anything more to say to him. However, at last I asked, I suppose you are thinking of opening your shop in our neighborhood. Yes, he answered, but nothing more than that. So that, although I now felt sure that he was a shopkeeper, I had no idea what he had for sale. I tried again. How is business? I asked him. Not bad, he said. We will come to your shop, I promised him in a proper neighborly spirit. And if we are satisfied, we will deal with you instead of going anywhere else. At that, he told me that he was sure that we should deal with him. Everyone did. His answer surprised me by its confident tone, but I was quite ready to believe the man because he had an honest look. Well, I offered him a coffee, and after that, we both relaxed. We sat back in our armchairs comfortably, and little by little, our conversation became friendly, very friendly. We talked and talked, at least I did, and we laughed and laughed, at least he did. And all the time I was trying to find out what exactly his business was. His answers were rather mysterious, but I was determined to find out and to find out without his having any idea about what I was doing. I was going to trick him into telling me. This was the trick that I had in my mind. I would tell him all about my own business in such a nice and friendly way that he, in return, would feel obliged to tell me all about his. I thought my trick a clever one and felt quite proud of myself for planning it. In fact, I became quite boastful. You would never guess how much money I made by giving lectures this winter and last spring, I boasted. No, I am sure I could not. But let me see. Maybe about $2,000? No, sir, no. I know you could not have made as much as that. I would say 1700, maybe. Ha ha ha. I laughed at him. I knew that you would not be able to guess. Well, I said, speaking slowly and emphasizing the figures in order to impress him all the more. I received for my lectures this winter and last spring $14,750. What do you think of that? Why? It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I will make a note of it. And you tell me that this was not all. All. Why, my dear sir? There was my income from articles in the newspapers. For 4 months, I got well, what would you say if I said about $8,000? See, why? I should say that I would like to see myself floating in such a golden sea. 8,000? I will make a note of it. Why? It's simply marvelous. And didn't you say that in addition to all this, you still had more money coming in? Ha ha ha. Why? We're only at the beginning of it. I wrote a book, The Innocent Abroad. Price three and a half to $5 according to the binding. Now just listen to this. During the last 4 months and a half, saying nothing of sales before that, but simply during the last 4 months and a half, we have sold 95,000 copies of that book. 95,000? I tell you. Let us say that each copy has an average price of $4. That comes to nearly $400,000. $400,000, my dear sir. And of that, I get half. Good heavens. I will make a note of that. How much does it all come to? Let me see. 14, 7, 50, then 8, then 200. The total is, I can hardly believe it. The total is about 213 or $14,000. Is that possible? Possible. Very likely. It is even more. Let me tell you, sir, that my income for this year is at least 214,000 if I know how to add. At this point, my visitor stood up and said that he was very sorry but he had to go. I felt disappointed and rather uneasy. I had told him my secrets and even enlarged some of the figures in order to impress him with my importance. But what had I learned about him and his business? Nothing. Nothing at all. I was wrong there, for when he reached the doorway, the gentleman turned and handed me a large envelope. This, he said with a pleasant smile, will tell you all about my business, and I will be happy and proud to deal with a man whose income is as immense as yours. His face saddened as he went on. There are quite a number of wealthy men in the town who appear to be very, very rich, and yet when they come to deal with me, I find that they have hardly enough money to live on. It is a very long time since I have had the pleasure of talking to a man who is really rich. He told me in a happier tone. A really rich man. A man who admits that he is rich. It is a marvel. And the simple hearted fellow was so carried away by his emotion that he threw his arms round me and wept tears of joy down the back of my neck. After that, he went away. As soon as he had gone, I opened his envelope. I studied the papers inside it attentively for 4 minutes. Then I shouted for our cook, and when she came, I told her, "Please hold me while I faint." Later on, when I felt better, I sent the cook out to find a man who would sit up all night for a week cursing that assessor. Ah, what a wicked, wicked man he was. His envelope contained nothing but some forms on which I had to declare my income for the purpose of income tax. 4 long pages in small print. There was a list of impolite questions about my private affairs, questions worded in such a way that the wisest man in the world would find hard to understand. I studied them all, seeking for a way out of my misfortune, but in vain. Question number one took away all my hope. What were your profits during the past year from any trade, business, or work wherever carried on? That question was followed by 13 others of the same pitiless kind. Here are some examples. Have you ever set fire to anything? Have you any other secret way of obtaining money? Have you received any property which you have not mentioned in your answer to question 1? The only thing that was clear to me, and which was as clear as daylight, was that the assessor had made a fool of me. He had tricked me into declaring that my income was $214,000. I knew that by law, 1,000 of this was free of income tax. But what sort of relief was that? A mere drop in the ocean. The fact was that at the legal rate of 5%, I had to pay over to the government in tax the fearful sum of $10,650. The thought was a nightmare. Who could I turn to in my distress? Who could I go to for advice and help? Well, I happened to know a very wealthy man. He owned a house that was like a palace. He entertained as if he were a king, and he spent money like water. Yet, with all his immense wealth, it appeared that he was, for purposes of income tax, a very poor man, and he paid no income tax at all. How on earth did he manage it? I felt that he was the man who could best advise me. I went to see him. He took my papers, he put on his glasses, he took his pen, and all of a sudden he made me a very poor man. I was amazed beyond all words, but to him it was a simple matter. He pointed to the page that was headed Deductions. Any sums that you wrote under that heading were deducted, that is, taken away from your income tax charges. The more you wrote, the less income tax you paid. Have you studied that? He asked me. Yes, I said, but I can't lawfully claim any deduction. Ah, he said, that doesn't matter. At once, he began to write down all sorts of imaginary sums of money. All quite false, of course. Under the heading of state, national, and town taxes, he wrote down quite a large sum. Under losses by shipwreck, fire, and so on, he wrote an even larger sum, while other large sums were entered under losses on sales of property, animals sold, payments for rent of home, and repairs and improvements. Believe it or not, he even wrote quite a large sum under salary already taxed as an officer of the United States Army or other service. At last, when he had completed the list, he handed me the paper and I saw that my income had undergone a magical change. It had become $1,250.40. Now, he said, the $1,000 is legally free from tax. All that you have to do is this: take this paper to the tax office, swear that every item on it is the truth, and then pay tax on the $250. Easy, isn't it? Yes, yes, sir, I said in some confusion. Do you always arrange deductions like this for your own income tax, sir? Of course, I do. Do you think I am such a fool as to pay what they demand? Why? Without these deductions, I would soon be a beggar. And why should I pay all that amount of tax to support this hateful, wicked, cruel, and dreadful government of ours? In our town, everyone has tremendous respect for this wealthy gentleman because of his honesty in private and public matters. I, therefore, took his advice. I went to the tax office and there, in front of my friend the assessor, I stood up and swore that everything written on the forms was the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth. I felt his eyes accusing me of lying, but they did not stop me. No, I went on, till my conscience was stifled by false declarations and my self respect was gone forever and ever. Thank you very much.